Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of the Skookum Session Bigfoot Roundtable podcast and Q&A. This is going to be episode 4, season 5. Tonight we've got with us Mr. John Schweitzer. John, how you doing? Oh, can't hear you, John.
Hear me now?
Yeah, I hear you
I
now. How
say
you doing?
I'm good. Probably better than I should be. Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
good.
good. Carter, how's it going?
Stunningly,
Stunningly?
stunningly. Everything's groovy, man.
Awesome. Awesome. And for the first time with us, we've got Mr. Dan Nadrella with us. A man who I highly respect. Awesome guy, wealth of knowledge. Dan, how's it going, brother?
It's also groovy here. All
You
good.
know,
Awesome.
if I'd have known you was gonna have Dan on here, I wouldn't have came because you've just letting anybody on the show now.
You dirty.
I've known Mr. Dan for years. He's been a big influence of mine for quite a while now. Great to have him in my how would we say, in the loop. Great, lots of knowledge there. Lots of knowledge.
Absolutely. And last but not least, we've got the living legend himself, Gary Spikes Jr.
Boy, I don't know
Gary.
how your check is in the mail.
Thank you. Thank you. I've been waiting for it. Tonight, guys, we're going to have something a little special. We had a bunch of ton of requests from viewers, and I'm talking long. You can ask Carter. I send him each and every request, and I'm talking on Messenger. I'm talking 7 inches. So we all agreed on one, and we'll hit something kind of unorthodox tonight. We're gonna hit the UFO Bigfoot connection and all the other weirdness that goes along with Bigfoot and other things out there. So Carter, you were saying you had a what's the proper word I'm looking for here?
Well, I have a good story with a Sasquatch UFO missing time.
Okay.
Both of my reports are involve missing time, which is usually linked to UFOs.
Right.
And so the first story was a gentleman up in New England states, very successful internet guy, owns a company that builds motherboards, and he's knee deep in computer stuff. He's a whiz. He makes good money, and he lives out in the middle of nowhere. That's his choice. So he was in a cabin. They have a cabin. It was a 2-bedroom cabin, he and his wife, and they had a baby, and then she got pregnant again. So they decided to remodel the cabin because they like living out in the boonies and then going back into the city to do all the crazy business stuff he has to do, then go back out and chill out in the woods. So they were, the wife, while she was pregnant, moved about 20 miles down the road to stay with her parents while he was managing the addition and reconstruction of the cabin, enlarging the place. So what he did was go to work in the morning, come back home around 4 o'clock or so, and then help with the guys working. He's kind of doing the general contracting, and then about 8 or 9 o'clock at night, they put everything away, go home for the night, and come back the next morning, start it all over. So one night he's there, and he had a German Shepherd, 110, 120 pound. He spent thousands training this dog. It was an attack kill dog. It was literally he had command words to kill, maim, whatever. Anyway, about 9 o'clock one night, they're putting all the stuff away. The workers are packing up and going away, and the house sits out in the middle of nowhere, but it's got lights everywhere. So he's just standing there watching everybody put stuff away, and he's kind of helping a little bit. All of a sudden, he sees about 50 yards away, and they had seen Sasquatch on their property before. And he just was fascinated, but they didn't interact. He sees a Sasquatch just walking right at him. And the dog He gives him his command. The dog's just standing there looking, like doing nothing. You know, this dog, you snap your fingers, it's supposed to kill. It just sits there. It's not cowering, it just sits there like it's dazed. So the Sasquatch is walking at him and he's going, I got to get out of here. So him and the dog bolt and run to the travel trailer he's living in while they're doing the work, because there's no utilities, no plumbing in the house. So he runs into the house, slams the door, and he sees the Sasquatch walking around the house. He's kind of banging on the door, banging on the windows, banging on the walls. He's walking all around the house, making circles. He's going, oh, this thing's coming in, it's going to kill us. I mean, he's freaking out. He realizes he doesn't have his pistol. So he runs into the kitchen in this travel trailer, it's 30-foot travel trailer, and pulls out a kitchen knife, a butcher knife. He runs into the bathroom, and him and the dog run into the bathroom. And you know how big a bathroom is in a travel trailer, not very big, like 4x4 maybe. And so as they run in, he bolts the door, and he's standing there with this knife like this, pointing at the door. He's waiting for this Sasquatch to run in and just kill him, eat him, rip him to shreds, which never happens anyway. But anyway, he's doing that, and the dog is just standing there, and it's doing nothing. And he is trained attack dog, and it's just doing nothing, like he's in a zone or something. And so he's standing like this. Next thing he knows, this was about 11:30 at night. Next thing he knows, 7:30 in the morning. He's still like this. 6 hours missing time. He has no idea. He woke up and he was just as refreshed and loose as if it just happened. Like if he was standing there like this for 7 hours, you know how you feel. You'd be all rigid and tight and everything. It was like he was refreshed, and the dog was still just leaning on him, like just looking, just staring, like the dog was snapped off. 6 hours of missing time. He has no idea where it went. And so the Sasquatch thing, he determined that, you know, the Sasquatch wasn't going to hurt him, but it was just walking around looking. It was just curious. And so I suggested to him, because I said, regression hypnosis. If you want to find out what happened, it's highly likely you can go do some regression hypnosis, because I've been through that, and I've been through regression hypnosis, and it does work. And so he didn't want to do that. He did not want to know, in his words, that I had a Travis Walton kind of thing where they took me and did whatever they wanted to me and put me back down on the ground. I don't want to know that, you know, because that's what he thought. He said I was either abducted or they did something to me. The Sasquatch, I have no idea, but it was weird. I don't want to know nothing about it.
Right.
So he, you know, so 6 hours of missing time, and that is mostly connected with UFOs and abductees more than Sasquatch. Second story, when I was doing a conference here in Missouri last August, after I did my speech, I was a speaker. After I got down, this woman came up to me. Long story short, she is a scientist. Her girlfriend who was with her was also a scientist. They were coming back from a conference from, where was it? They were headed back to Oklahoma. The conference was somewhere in Missouri. They were driving across Missouri, headed to Oklahoma. And there was two other women in the back seat. They were all employed by a scientific research company. Her and her friend who spoke with me were both scientists, degreed scientists. The women in the back worked for the same company, but were not degreed, but they were all in the same general field. So they're driving back, 8 o'clock at night, left Missouri, and they're driving down the highway, and all of a sudden they see a Sasquatch running down the road alongside their car. And so they slam on the brakes, and it keeps running on ahead, and then it stops, and it looks around at them, and they decide just to floor it and get out of there. So they floor it and get out of there, and then the creature starts running again along the side of the car, keeping up with them 45, 50, 55 miles an hour. I mean, wow. And so then they slam on the brakes again, and the creature stops, it looks at them, and walks across the highway and disappears into the brush. They pull over, they're all freaked out. and just like, oh my God, what did we just see? You know, and I thought it was kind of funny, but anyway, I'll finish the story, then I'll tell you what. And so anyway, they talked about it, decided to keep on going back after they figured out everything was okay. They looked at their clock and they lost an hour and a half. They had an hour and a half of missing time. The whole event didn't take but 10 minutes, if that. And so they didn't stand there on the side of the highway talking for an hour and a half. They looked at their clocks when they pulled over and realized we lost an hour and a half. Now, the funny part is, you know how scientists are, these things don't exist. So you've got 4 women, 2 scientists, degreed, and 2 working in the scientific community. They're baptized instantly. She had no way to deny that these things don't exist. They saw it, you know, and she was just going, the irony of it is, I don't even hardly know what they are, but now I do. And it was just like, it happened. So they had an hour and a half of missing time, and they're scientists, you know, so that's fascinating. It's just an incredible story. And I've talked to her since then. I put her in the second book, or the third book, actually. It's just, they had no explanation. She goes, I'm totally baffled. And I'm a scientist. I'm never baffled. I have an answer for everything. And I can't explain it, but we saw it. And so, you know, I kind of thought it was funny because there's 2 scientists agreed and 2 in the same field that they instantly have no excuse for not believing because they saw it. You know, right. It was hilarious. I mean, she laughed a little bit, but she was really just irritated that, you know, I can't explain it. I can't explain the loss of time, you know, and she was baffled. But, you know, now that's not a UFO connection, but honestly, I believe that the UFO, the Sasquatch thing is kind of overlapping with when you have missing time and portals and dimensions and being able to appear and disappear and change your vibrational frequency. You know, what the Sasquatch do to get to the spots they're in by changing their frequencies and whatever, if that's how they materialize and dematerialize and go from one dimension to another, go into a tree and go out the back and you never see it, you know, whatever that is, that same type of theory is used often to explain, you know, UFO alien abduction type things, especially with the abductees. So I just thought there's 2 connections right there, you know, and so what do you do with that? You know, one guy doesn't want to know. I mean, he knows darn good and well it happened, but he doesn't want to know what happened to him when he and the dog were out for 6 hours.
I wouldn't want to know either.
Yeah, yeah. And the guy's like very well off. He makes good money. He's got a very successful company, and you know, he goes to live in the woods because he's more comfortable out there than he is in the big city, but that's where he goes to make his money. So, but he was like, I don't want to know what happened. I do not want to know. I even tried contacting him a couple of times afterwards. He didn't want to talk. You know, he just never responded to my emails. And I get it. You know, he doesn't want to deal with it. Maybe when he's retired and he gets really curious, he may contact me or just do it on his own and find a regression hypnotist and find out what happened. You know, but you know, he's a guy I just believe he's just sincere as he could be, and he's a smart guy, and you know, he's like a, you know, upper management, like a top executive. You know, he's like Ross Perot or Bill Gates or somebody who's that kind of a wheel. If he says something, he's not BSing. You know, he just can't explain it. He doesn't want to know, because I think he knows. You know.
Yeah.
So maybe somebody listening has had experiences like that, and you know, they want to call in or say something or ask us. But you know, that stuff happens. You know, and you know, you just have to have somewhat of an open mind and you know, try to explain it the best you can. You know,
you do. You have to have an open mind. I've lost time.
Yep. Twice. You have.
Yep. Yep.
I probably have. I was taken when I was 10. It's a whole other story. But you know,
wow.
I don't know how. Oh yeah, and I am just now re-listening to my tape. I was regressed 4 times.
Oh wow.
Because I wanted to be sure it wasn't my imagination. And they're right on. I'm re-listening to some of this. I'm going, I started getting all chills and kind of teary because I was going, because when they took me under, my wife and myself and another couple, friends of ours, we decided we wanted to go do a past life search. We wanted to find out who we were or what we were in a past life. So I found a regression hypnotist here in the Kansas City area, and we all four went to her studio, and she took us under one by one, and we recorded the whole thing. And when it came to me, I went last. My wife couldn't go under. Some people just can't be taken under. The other two, Nancy and Steve, they went under. They relived their past lives. They talked about what they were and what they were doing. When they took me under, I started bawling and talking like a 10-year-old boy, sobbing. I didn't even realize it at the time. I had no idea. And so they're recorded, and I started describing this story that I told all my life about almost getting run over by a blue car. Long story short, it wasn't a blue car, it was a craft. And it took me and my friend Craig on this craft. Now, I don't know if anybody knows who Dolores Cannon is. She's one of the world-renowned regression hypnotists. She's died. She died about 6-7 years ago. She's in Arkansas. I went to her twice, and it wasn't cheap. And the other two women I went to were both her students. Same results, same story. And I went under, and I'm listening to my tapes now. I mean, I've got them on the cassette player. I listen to them, 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there. And I was just going, oh my God, it gives me the chills, but it happened, it happened. And there's no explanation. I had no, I told this story all my life of almost getting run over by a car when I was racing my friend Craig after we got new bikes. We almost got hit by a blue Buick. I remember distinctly, it was in my house when I lived in Dallas. We were racing, and we were right in front of my house. And I remember the blue car. And I always told this story, like, I did stupid stuff when I was a kid, almost got run over, ran a stop sign with my friend. And everybody has stories they tell about how they almost could have been killed or done something stupid, So that's a story I always told. I had no idea. And I didn't find out until that happened when I was 10. So I would have been 1961-ish. I didn't find out until 2006 to 2010 is when I went under 4 times. I didn't find out because I found out that time we went to find out what our past lives were, that the story I always told and I always believed to be a certain way wasn't what it was at all. And it's shocking. So this stuff happens, and some people just aren't going to believe it, and I can't help that, but that's what happened. And so I understand why my witness, I think I call him Josh in my book, fake name, but he didn't want to know. I didn't know that something had happened to me. I was always under the impression I almost got run over by a car because I was being a dumbass kid and racing my bike in broad daylight and almost got run over. It was crazy. So, same thing with Sasquatch things. People think they saw one, and they don't remember what happened. They blacked out because they were scared or they literally passed out or whatever. Yep. And they wake up an hour or two later and they don't even know if that really happened. Was that a dream? Did that really happen? I mean, people that, if you're sitting there staring at a Sasquatch, people are questioning themselves when they're looking at one. Mm-hmm. That can't be. They don't exist. Why don't they exist? Well, that's because they tell us they don't exist. There's no such thing as Sasquatch. There's no such thing as UFOs. Oh, wait, well, they lied about that. So maybe there are Sasquatch. So it's a horrible conundrum when you have a sighting of anything, paranormal or cryptid or quantum, paranormal, whatever, and you can't define it. Half of that's because we're taught that certain things just cannot be. And so, and you're educated, the first 20 years of your life, you're indoctrinated, educated by the government and our scholastic system to tell you how the world is, what is and what isn't. And so when you see it, your first thing you're going to do is go, well, that can't be, that doesn't exist. My teacher told me, my priest told me, my friends tell me, social media tells me they don't exist. So what is that? So immediately you cancel it out and go about your day. There's people right now that are going, God, that happened to Uncle Terry. That sounds just like what, if somebody listening to this show right now or on the repeat, they're going to go, that happened. Remember that, somebody's having these events. People are having them all the time. I've got witnesses calling me all the time, telling me updates on bizarre stuff. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'll shut up. But
No, it's all right. Hey, Dan, yeah, you're a scientist. What are your thoughts on this?
I've got numerous blips of information from different witnesses that had similar situations. And I was just thinking, what can I think of? It's really nice that'll add to this. I've got one of my coworkers was from Colorado, and he's over half Navajo, and he was out when he was younger, probably in his about 30, hunting coyotes, and he's sitting on a log, and it's starting to get a little bit dark, but not bad, and everything's fine. He's still waiting, and all of a sudden he's real close to a tree, and all of a sudden he feels a hand on top of his head, and of course the shock of that took him out. So he was unconscious. He woke up in the middle of the night. His rifle was fine. There wasn't any tracks. There wasn't any sign. He's a tracker. So he's looking, and he's there's another example of how sometimes maybe our body will just be in shock from something that we can't handle because it's so unusual or so against what we know. And I think he was open to Sasquatch, but the idea of that situation. So for different people, I'm thinking different things can trigger you to go out. But also, I've got a story from Ohio where a friend of mine, when she was a little girl, she had different experiences and she did see several Sasquatches. Now, what the unusual thing about it was one day she was running around a corner and she was heading toward the road to go to school, and she saw this thing on two legs in some sort of shiny uniform standing by the creek. But it wasn't anything, it sounded more like a UFO occupant of some sort. She said she only saw it once, but she'd had other things happen that, she had the standard vocals and all the Sasquatch things, and it was in Ohio. And of course, that's a well accepted state for a presence. And, but she saw that. She only saw it once. She had a brother that had seen a Mothman of some sort, some flying thing up on a telephone pole that was huge. So, man, we still have tons of mysteries, and that's my counterpart, or that's my contribution regarding that subject. So,
well, you're right on the money, John. I see you taking notes up there.
Am I taking notes?
I saw you taking notes.
Oh. Jeremiah, you know what I believe. All right. Oh, Lordy. I'll just put it this way. If this exists, if Sasquatch exists, I truly believe it's an animal. All right. As far as it being involved with UFOs, that's still out there. Okay, that's still out there. Nothing has been proven. Nothing at all has been proven. It's pretty much all speculation. And you've got someone's story in regards, Now, with that said, I've seen a UFO, an unidentified flying object, and I was 11 years old. Now, at 74 now, that was a long time ago. But if my finger, boy, I wish I had my a bore light in here. It'd be a lot cooler if I did. Do I? Anyway, follow my finger, okay? The tip of my finger. Off in the distance, it went like this. it dropped down, and it shot off. And it went about like this. So that, and it, my buddy says, look at that, look at that. Okay. And then it turned the light on. And then it dropped down with this light. And then it shot off at about a 45-degree angle. Now, was that actually happening like overhead like this? And it looked like this? I don't know. But when I was 11 years old, I don't know of anything in it, you know, that would make that type of a movement in outer, you know, in the air. But, you know, I like astronomy.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
I know a little bit about that, enough to make me dangerous to myself. But I'll leave the jumping through portholes and that Bigfoot is aliens from a penal colony being dropped off here. I'll leave that to all the Rod Serlings out there. So you know, I don't want to I'm not trying to upset anybody at all. We've all got an opinion.
Yep.
So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. So
Fair enough.
yeah.
Fair enough. Gary?
This is a kind of a can of worms for me because, you know, I'm in both fields. I like the UFO phenomenon and the Bigfoot phenomenon. I've
Me too,
never
bud.
lost time myself. I have a lot of friends that have. We're doing a study on losing time at this point with some very close friends of mine. And there are some people out of Canada that are a couple of doctors from one's a psychologist and one's a metaphysicist, if I say that right.
You did.
Are doing a study on it. It is definitely a phenomenon. I myself personally agree with John. The phenomenon, for better terms, that I seen was a physical being. I have not seen any physical evidence of them climbing into a UFO, going through a portal, but I'm not going to dispute it, because how can you not believe in one and not the other? I mean, if you believe in spirits and if you believe in UFOs, the capability is there. We don't know what these things can do.
Right.
But in my own personal belief, I've seen too many reports. Well, the very famous one up there by you, Jeremiah, where the police officers seen at Whitehall.
Yeah.
They actually seen UFOs and seen the Sasquatch in the same area. And
yeah.
I myself am not going to debunk. How would you say? Not debunk it, but bring it down because who knows? The one time that I do, then of course, everybody knows that the U.S. government and a lot of the government, even Japan, just this year, is acknowledging UFOs. So the first time I say that it's not true, one's going to come and fly down and step out of a spaceship,
Right.
And I'm going to be looking like a fool. But my deal with it is I honestly believe that they've been here longer than we have. If you look at all of Dan, this is right down your alley. If you look at all the primates on the planet, we're the anomaly. These things have more primate characteristics than we do. Even the way we walk, there is not a primate on this planet that walks like humans do. Just saying. I think we might be from the stars.
Cannot disagree with that.
Everybody got quiet.
Can't hear you. Daryl's trying to talk. Can't hear him. He's still connecting. Oh, can you hear us now, Daryl? Can't hear you, buddy.
Maybe he needs to log off and log back in or something.
Yeah, Daryl. Log back off and log back in.
We can't hear you.
In the chat. Keep going, Carter. You
Well, you know, your beliefs and your experience is just that, you know, and certain things can't be explained by conventional means. And so you've got to reach elsewhere or just let it go, you know. And I've had something happen to me with my wife as a witness where I was seeing things that were not there and I was pointing them out to her. And she was going, "What are you talking about?" And I suddenly realized that I was being manipulated with either some kind of, you know, mental images, mind speak, or whatever. It was just, it was really magnificent what they did. They made me look like a fool, and I knew what was going on, and I could do nothing about it. You know, and my wife was starting to freak out because, you know, I was seeing something that was not possible, yet I was adamant I was seeing it. Yeah, I knew what was going on, but the whole point of that is that, you know, things do happen to people and you just can't blow it off if you are curious about that stuff. You know, I want an answer. I can't let something just go. Okay, well, that must have just been, you know, bad sandwich or, you know, a couple of extra too many beers or whatever. You know, you have to, you know, I want an explanation, you know, and I'm going to dig for it, you know, and, you know, I've talked to too many people that are intelligent, you know, law-abiding, not crazy, not druggies, not mentally ill, just regular people that are all talking about the same type things that are just off the wall, off the charts. And you have to, at some point, you got to start listening to these people and looking into it, because you hear 40 of the same story from 40 different people. There's something there, you know. Did we lose him?
yeah, we lost him again. You know, I'm kind of on both. Like Gary, you know, you and I are kind of on both sides of this. We've
Absolutely.
talked about this several times. I believe these things are some type of animal, okay, but I also believe they have special abilities, okay, which if that makes sense. You know, I do believe they're flesh and blood, but I do believe they have special abilities. I do believe they can. I truly do believe they can cross over in other places. The Native Americans have talked about it for 10,000 years. You know, they've got it right on the money. You know, they've got it right on the money, and you know, with the cave drawings and so on and so forth. You know, I believe when they're here, they have to do what we have to do. They have to eat. They have to defecate. They have to hunt. You know, that kind of stuff while they're in our reality.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people are gonna, you know, probably get a lot of negative feedback on this, but I really don't care. But I do believe they are flesh and blood, but I do believe there are special abilities involved.
Yeah. Whatever plane they operate in is the way they have to act. Like you said, the bodies, you know, they eat, they sleep, they defecate, they reproduce, whatever, you know. But if they go to another plane or portal, they're ruled by different principles, you know, the abstract, esoteric, you know, quantum type principles, you know. And even science, although they won't admit to Bigfoot, they will admit that these quantum type attributes are possible. The scientific theory show that can happen. This, and this can happen if this happens. So they will admit that's a possibility. It's scientific theory. But they don't believe in Sasquatch. They don't believe a Sasquatch has those abilities, you know, or any terrestrial people, which is, you know, a fallacy. I think, you know, it's either, you know, ignorance on their part or just a desire not to, you know, who wants to be the first one to make a fool of themselves, because that's the way they look at it, you know.
Right. Yeah, I still can't hear him. Still can't hear you, buddy.
Wish I could read lips.
Me too.
Who can't hear who? Oh, boy.
But his microphone's on.
Yeah.
Turn it up.
Turn your microphone up.
Write him a note and put it up.
He's on a phone. He's on his
Oh,
iPhone.
oh boy.
Yep.
I was late to the party, so that's where I'm at. But hey, it's working, so we'll take it.
Yep.
There we
You
go.
know, but if each of us have seen and experienced things that we can't explain by traditional methods. So
Right.
we make it fit the best we can, or explain it with what knowledge and experience we have. But there's odd, bizarre stuff going on all around us. With the Sasquatch, and possibly Dogman, and all the other cryptids that are out there running around.
Now let's get to another little part. Now, what do you guys think on the question we got about them, the females, their breeding time? Their breeding time is to avoid. They breed at a certain time of year to avoid winter. You believe that?
To me, it would vary.
Depending on the climate.
Yeah, exactly. Geographically is certainly going to be a limiting factor, or you'd think it would be. As we have this fractional information now, as it starts to come together, it's going to be interesting to see more and more of that information that comes in, and
Right.
how things align. So, but it was interesting because there was a broadcast last night with some of the folks from out Pacific Northwest, specifically Washington, maybe Oregon, and they were speaking about perhaps the sing-song events and some of the vocalizations that may well be in orchestra and celebration of things like perhaps childbirth, and that would be numbers of them. And some of the things I've heard we were talking about earlier tonight were some of the first times I've heard people discuss that, and it certainly makes sense. So I thought I'd mention that.
Yeah. I mean, what do you think, Carter?
Well, I've heard a few tales. One really recently that they, when possible, they mate and give birth in mass. It's almost like a convention. They gather together in specific areas for safety and perhaps to stop or prevent inbreeding, if that's even a concern for them. And not knowing the biology, I wouldn't know, but that they procreate and find mates in some kind of big, large, almost like a convention or gathering. And if they give birth or become pregnant at about the same time, the birthing will be very close to same, and they gather again to give birth. So that's all in safety, and it's all a celebratory thing, and it keeps the clan and the family as one, experiencing, and everybody gets to experience the whole thing. It's theory, but these are stories by indigenous peoples that this is what they used to do.
Yeah.
Before white man became so prevalent. So maybe they've gone further up into the hinterland, and we just don't see that. But I've heard a couple of those. It kind of makes sense, but and if they can communicate great distances, or by simply going to another dimension, or changing their vibrational frequency and go somewhere and confirm a meeting, and then they get together. I mean, it all sounds just like Hollywood stuff, but that's a whole other way of life we have no knowledge of.
No, none.
You have no idea, you know.
No.
I think if you look back in some, Native American and indigenous peoples, I think there was, the Hispanic culture, they celebrate the girls coming of age at 16. It's a big deal in the Hispanic communities where you're coming of age. And, I forget what the name of the dance is. It's the mother-daughter dance. It's a big, big thing. You get the big dress, you're 14 or 15, and, and you celebrate that you're now a fertile woman and you are able to give birth, and you're a woman because you've reached a certain age, puberty or whatever. And so it's celebrated. So we do it in our culture, not the white culture, but Hispanics and African, they celebrate becoming a man, becoming a woman in a big, big way, a big victorious way. So why couldn't that happen with these beings that we know very little about? We can't say no just because, well, that can't be. That would involve organization and intelligence. That won't be. That can't be.
Yeah.
Well, we don't know, but we do it as our species. So why couldn't somebody else do it in a more primitive way? But it's the same thing.
Yeah.
I
can jump in real quick with one of the reports that I followed through with a field trip to Indiana, and we had a congregational gathering there with actually videotape had been confiscated by break-ins. 1, 2, there was all kinds of vocalizations recorded. 3, there were 5 families involved in describing the events. I was there for 5 days taking in this information. Unfortunately, I got there too late because the sociopolitics got in the way of my arrival there. But long story short, there may well have been over 20 individuals that had gotten together, hung out in the hills, and then they would migrate through into the agricultural areas to feed. And numerous people saw them. And there were males, females, and offspring, and at least 20 individuals there. And I was able to listen to some of the audio, and I have some of the audio, and I can tell you that there was a congregation of numerous individuals. I just took a report yesterday morning, actually, from a contact of mine, and I asked her, interestingly, perfectly before our get together today, and I just said, what was the largest number? And she'd grown up with these things, so she had seen all kinds of different situations, and some aggression and some retaliation, and a lot of kindness and a lot of exchanges with feathers and rocks, etc. But what we're looking at here is that the largest number of congregational eyes she had counted seemed to have come from almost 23 to 25 individuals.
Wow.
That she'd seen along the fence line.
That's crazy.
And she started, her first experience was having her hair tugged when she was 6 years old, rolling around and looking out through the window and looking into the eyes of the large black-haired individual with dark gray skin staring at her. She screamed. He backed off and walked off.
Wow.
And this continued on. She had been pulled out of a tent at one point and yelled and dropped. Teenagers having fun. And she'd had numerous other situations. She also confronted a large male in some situations, and she found different methods that seemed to calm him, that she was like digging in the dirt, for example. So anyway, there's reports out there, but sometimes they take time to get to us, or they are literally covered and smothered, and we don't hear about them until they're publicized, etc. So.
Right.
Yeah.
Daryl, can you hear us?
Yeah, I hear you.
There we go. Okay. I want to hear your thoughts on this. We're talking about the possible UFO Bigfoot connection and all the other weirdness that goes along with it. Yeah, you and I and Gary, all 3 of us are on the same, Carter, we're all on the same page on this. What do you tell us what you think?
Well, I think it all depends on, there's two different sides of that, and I'm not locked in on either one. I personally think that in some ways that they were brought here originally from outer space, and that's probably, I don't believe they're the Nephilim. I believe they were brought here from outer space originally.
Well, when Justin comes on, we only got 5 minutes left. Justin finally said,
I got a question for Dan. I'm
Go ahead.
wondering where in Indiana is it that was taking place, county-wise?
I can't give specifically, but I'll say at the top. First of all, it was from 2002. Okay, and it was Park County.
In what county? Howard? Is that what you said?
What's that?
Howard? Did you say Howard County?
No,
I didn't
Park.
catch Clark.
P-A-R-K.
Oh, Park. Oh, really?
Yes, sir.
Me,
Hey, Justin.
I'm 7 minutes from Park County.
there's got to be. I hate to interrupt you guys. This hit my mind, and there's got to be some sort of correlation between, these sightings, and you're seeing crafts in the air and orbs before, during, and after the encounters or the experiences. I've experienced it myself. I can't lie to myself and say, yo, you're a freaking bullshitter, Jeremiah. You didn't see that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I agree with that.
it's
There's
your
gotta
reality. It's your reality.
Yes, there's got to be some correlation.
Nobody can take that away from you. They can try, but
Exactly.
you saw it,
Exactly.
you experienced it. You're not nuts. And
I've got videos and videos upon videos of this stuff.
mhm.
It's just bizarre. Justin, what's up?
Hey, what's up, guys?
Well, you're just in time. We're about to get off in about 10 minutes. 5-10 minutes. I'm glad you got on. We're talking about the possible UFO Bigfoot connection. I want to hear your thoughts.
Bigfoot UFO, huh? Well, there's no denying that in a lot of reports, there's a correlation, either same time or within a few days in either direction. We do have those one-offs where they talk about seeing, big hairy creatures getting pulled up into the craft or drop out of a craft, things like that. And I'm not going to discount those at all, you know what I mean? Because like you said, I wasn't there. I didn't see anything. But I don't think in general, that's what we're dealing with when we're dealing with the target species as a general rule. I think they're more earthbound, and then not saying that either, if the UFO topic is real and they could be abducted for studies, right? I mean, if humans are, why not them? There's a close correlation, right? So why not?
That's a great point.
There's definitely some sort of correlation that I've heard, but it kind of also depends on how you operate and base your theories off of, right? It could just be an area of high strangeness and coincidental as well.
True.
So
I
think it's a big leap to go from studying the mystery of Bigfoot, studying the mystery of UFOs, and then making the collaboration that all Bigfoot are ETs. I think that's a bit of a stretch to go with without, the kind of evidence that we do have.
Oh, I do agree with that. Yeah.
There is definitely at times a correlation between Bigfoot sightings and UFO sightings.
And other types of weirdness.
And other phenomenon as well. Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But like I said, is it a coincidental? Is it a high strangeness issue?
True.
Is it, there's so many things. Possibly there's something there attracting them. If we're talking vortexes or whatever, like I said, depends on what your operating theory is as to what you would go with it,
Yeah.
But I think we don't have anywhere near the evidence to be able to try and say one way or the other, just like anything in this subject, right? There's no definitive answer for it. And I think we got to be careful when some people start saying, You know, because I've heard it said all Bigfoots are ETs, and I said, well, you can't say that because that's a huge leap in logic right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because we just don't know.
We just don't know.
The thing about, may I add, the thing about breeding is all animals breed. And if you'll notice, animals do go in heat at certain times.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about where I'd leave that. You know,
Right.
Supposedly human beings, it's the only proof we've got, are the only beings or the only creatures that breed for fun. Okay, recreational
You
purposes.
better throw bonobos.
Bonobos do it too. Bonobos and chimps do it too.
Yep, I've heard that.
That's one of my useless bits of knowledge.
I've never watched it, but I'm not into
So-
watching bonobos do it.
With
I love it.
bonobos, it actually has to do with social structure and dominance in their hierarchy.
Yes,
Yes.
it does.
So I mean, even male on male sex is common because they're simply showing it's their dominant feature of how they do things in their hierarchy.
Yeah.
So not necessarily for pleasure, but definitely recreational at that point. You know what I mean?
Well, you never know. They might get some pleasure out of it.
Well, I'm sure they do, but
1 out of 2, anyhow, right?
Well,
Right.
the key word there was recreational. So, okay, dokie.
right.
Recreational.
I don't really think we know the answer to that.
No.
Now, breeding had nothing to do with UFOs, so I don't know where that came from, but
No, we were talking about it earlier.
A little bit earlier, yeah.
I personally totally believe that Dr. Melba Ketchum proved they were 50% human female and 50% unknown. So my personal belief is that that females here on Earth breeded with these creatures at one time or another. That's my personal belief. Whether they were American Indian or whatever they were.
Well, the Navajos talk about the Star Children, and the Star Children, and these children that were these women that were impregnated. If you do the history on the Navajo and the Hopis that were impregnated by the Sasquatch, these children that were birthed, they were large, hairy, and they would die by the age of 6 years old.
You had the ant men too, or the ant creatures, or I can't think of what they called it.
the ant people,
Ant people.
Ant people.
Yeah. See, I think that's interesting. I totally get what Dr. Ketchum was doing there, but I think we need to have more repeatable results in the same way from other independent researchers to be able to really definitively say that's exactly what was going on there. Not questioning her specifically, but just when you do scientific stuff like that, one of the basis of the scientific theory is it has to be repeatable. And not just by her, it has to be repeatable in other labs with other people doing the research, right? So I definitely won't discount it. I'm not one of these people that say it's not possible. I don't discount her work. I mean, I've read the papers talking about why what she did was an error. And with my little bit knowledge, that they seem to make sense as well. And so what we need to have is basically either her refuting that with new tests that will negate those questions that were brought up about her methodology. Plus, like I said, it needs to be repeatable by other labs doing the same thing. I know right now on Facebook, she's actually looking for donations to do more DNA work. I saw that come across my Facebook a couple times now, but she's doesn't seem to be getting much reaction with it, not getting a whole lot of support behind it.
That makes me wonder.
But she's also, asking for thousands upon thousands of dollars, She did put out there that if somebody was willing to donate $10,000, she would give them all the results of all of her work as long as they signed an NDA. I did see that put out there as well.
Yeah, that's a nice chunk of change.
That's a good chunk of change. I know I didn't got it laying around.
Me either.
For something that might turn out to be inconclusive, that is an exceptionally large chunk of change.
Well, and that's why the Erickson project funded it the first time around, but with all the
Yes.
controversy behind it,
Yep.
you know, he dropped off the backing of it.
Yeah, that kind of drove a nail in it just because
Yeah.
of that action in itself. And you're right. You have to reproduce results, the same results, not just in 2 different labs, but continuously right down the
Well,
line.
I
gotta
think
prove
it
it.
was, I don't mean to interrupt, but I think it was proven in more. I know it was 3 labs. It may have been more, but a lot after they had found out what they were giving results on, a lot of the labs completely said it was all contaminated, wanted no part of the study. So
Right.
You are correct.
It's
You are
been a
absolutely correct
historical-
on that. But the difference is it was all part of the same study. Yes, she sent it off to different independent labs to get results.
Correct.
Absolutely. And that is true. And that was one of the things that I agree with that she did. Absolutely. But it needs to be different studies as well. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I don't have a problem with that at all. It's just, I know they had over 101, by however you pronounce that word, blood samples. They had hair samples. They had everything they needed to prove it. And I was on top of that every minute I could when this study was going on.
Yeah,
I think it was called the Genome Project, and I thought the scientists and everybody just bailed out on her, myself, but wanted to disprove her due to the fact that it kind of messes up the evolution with the scientific theory of most of your the big scientists that have their own theories. That was my theory of why they all come down on her. They don't want us to not believe what we've been reading in the history books in school and being taught all our lives. And I personally don't believe that at all. But that's my personal opinion.
No, I agree. I agree 100% on that. And that's where you have to be even extra above your controls when you're trying to do something that controversial, Well, what's the saying? Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. And that's just, kind of how it has to go when you're talking about genetics and trying to, especially factoring the fact that, a species can't crossbreed to begin with. So not only are you flying in the fact of Bigfoot existing, you're also flying into the fact of a non-human breeding with a human and producing viable offspring to the point where it's actually basically sustaining and creating the species. So not only are you flying in the fact of the existence of Bigfoot, you're flying into the fact of all known genetic science, period. And so if you're going that route, which I think we need to check that route, push that envelope, you know what I mean? You have to be like so on top of your P's and Q's. It's not even funny. And unfortunately, I don't think that kind of controls were put in place for the study, which is where multiple things need to be,
I think the study got off track a little bit because of all the discreditation too, because there was a whole lot of that toward the end when the first two or three DNA tests come back and showed 50% human female. But I personally don't believe that Bigfoot is anything but a people. I think they are a people, is what I think. That's my personal opinion.
Right. So yeah, I'd be really interested to see, and I know it's going to happen at some point. There will be further studies. There'll be further, financiers that are willing to push it, or the cost will come down, or however it works. You know what I mean?
There's probably studies going on right now that we don't know about.
Yeah. Well, I know
right, Jay.
I know some guys out of Florida that did a very similar thing, just on a smaller scale, right? And their results came back a mixture of different primates.
Okay.
We came back as some gorilla, some chimp, some bonobo, some orangutan. Had no human functionality to it at all. Right. So when you're getting disparate results like that, you got to start going, okay, well, what's going on?
Well, this speaks to all the variety of the possible phenotypes across the distribution of the species. Or
absolutely.
You can always.
What exactly are we dealing with, and then do they hybridize on top of it?
Mhm.
A very good point. Very good point.
Yeah,
On top
absolutely.
of the fact, there's so many different types of what I call the forest people, Sasquatch,
Yeah.
Bigfoot types. So we may be labeling another one as a type that's not actually a type of these people.
Exactly. We may not be we may be labeling something as a Bigfoot where it's a totally
Correct.
different entity.
Correct.
Yep.
And the only way to know that, and I hate to say it again, is going to be type specimen having a body, live or dead, however you want to put it.
Yep.
And continual studies on the genetics of them. That's the
Yep.
only way to keep going on that route, if that's how you're looking at it,
And that's assuming that everything is going to be on the up and up from the get-go. You've got
Right.
to assume that, because in a lab, depending upon the agenda, it's going to come out however the person running it wants it to come out. And for the believer, there's no proof is necessary, and for the skeptic, no proof is possible. And it just flat out runs that way.
That's true. Very good point.
It is a good point. Yeah.
So,
Well, gentlemen, we've run out of time, unfortunately.
I apologize for getting in late.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
I was all ready for you.
Oh, okay, got you. Thank you,
yeah.
And I promise all you viewers next week we will get to your questions. I had a page about 7 inches long, questions and topics you guys wanted us to cover. We will get to them next week. I promise you. Tonight we had a real good show, real good discussion, and kind of didn't want to get off topic, but yeah, it was great.
I got to do this. I got to do this. I got to do this. We are unofficially tonight sponsored by Sasquatch Soap.
Hey!
That works.
If those folks are out there, maybe they'll give us a hand, huh? Anyway.
Maybe.
That works. Yeah.
Hey, I use it. I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I drink
barreled bourbon. Wood barrel
the,
bourbon.
The coffee
makes the police stop you every time, man.
Not here in Tennessee. They're used to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. They are.
Well, gentlemen, it's been a good night. Appreciate it. And thanks everybody for checking us out. And we will be back next week with hopefully the same group. Hopefully we can all make it. And we're missing Nick. Nick will be back next week. Joe, maybe. And we'll see what happens. And bring you another good show. You guys have a good night. And thanks for coming on. And love you all.
All right. Thank you, Jay. Take care, fellas.
Have a good night, guys.
Thank you.